Hey guys, so I am doing a tag today that I was tagged in by Josh of Literary Gladiators because he knows me so well, and he was tagged in this tag. It's called the JFK tag, and it was first created by Carrie from Very Literary Carrie. All of the links to both Josh's video in which he tags me and the original video from Carrie are there in the description. Now, of course, you know that I'm president obsessed, so when Josh was like, there's a JFK tag, there is clearly only one person I can tag, and he was correct. It is me, and I am excited to talk about this tag and the questions and talk about JFK. This is, of course, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, one of the presidents of the United States, who was, of course, assassinated. So these questions are specific to JFK and the Kennedy family life, and I feel like each question is its own little history tidbit, which I love, but let's get started. Number one is Tenuvus Onemore. Rose and Joe Sr. had a boat called Tenuvus to signify the 10 members of the Kennedy clan. With the birth of Ted, the family named another boat One More. What book with a large cast of characters would you recommend? For some reason, thought about this one for a little bit. For when I think large casts of characters, I tend to think of fantasy novels, specifically high fantasy. And I was like, oh, I don't really read a lot of that, do you, Dodo? I mean, I only have the tattoo on my shoulder, so of course I have to say Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is one of the best written high fantasy series for teens, which is about my speed of high fantasy. I love the characters that are in the initial series itself, but if you also read the 4 prequel novellas, those characters come back for bit parts at the end of the series, and you feel like, oh, I get the inside thing. So there's just a really, really wonderful collection of characters that come back around in this story, plus just having a total kick-butt female lead. So I love this series. I have the tattoo. I'm actually wearing a shirt from Sarah's other series. So yeah, just love this series. So question 2 is about PT-109. PT-109 was the cruiser that JFK was the captain of, possibly because of him making a mistake, possibly not, but he definitely had a hand in almost single-handedly saving the bulk of his crew. So that's a really crazy story that could have been a novel part of his life, except for then he became president, so whatever. But the question there is, what is your favorite book featuring a harrowing survival, rescue, or war story? And when I think of my favorite war story, because survival and rescue are not my thing, I think of Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein. This is a YA novel about 2 girls during World War II. One is a spy and one is a cargo plane pilot, and they form a friendship, and it is heart-wrenching, it is tear-jerking, and it is just one of the most powerful books that I've ever read. So I always recommend this to people. It's amazing. I love it. It's not a happy book. I know there was survival in this question. This is not a happy book, but it's really, really worthwhile reading if you haven't already. It's been out for a while at this point. So JFK famously had a disease called Addison's disease, which is the theme of question 3. Sort of famously because he hid it really well while he was alive, and then it's one of those things that kind of came out after he died. But this question is, what is your favorite book that deals with disease or the medical field? And while some of these made me think a lot, this one I knew automatically had to be Candace Miller's Destiny of the Republic, A Tale of Madness. This is ostensibly a story on the murder of President Garfield, James Garfield, but it's also intertwining Alexander Graham Bell and the guy who assassinated Garfield and their lives, and it's just really interesting, and there's a solid chance that Garfield could have survived his shooting had medical science, I don't even want to say had medical science been more advanced, because the guy who was talking about hey, clean your medical instruments was literally being laughed at the time. And so had his wound been more sterilized and maybe kept a little bit more clean, maybe he could have lived. But he didn't. The book is amazing. It almost reads like fiction. It's just so good. So question 4 is about Camelot. This is the name that Jackie Kennedy gave to JFK's time as president was this magical Camelot time. And the question then is, what real or imagined dynasty would you like to read more on? I would like to depart from presidents for a little bit. I also have fascination with the Russian Romanov dynasty, and I recently learned that Helen Rappaport, who is one of the major people writing like a series of books chronicling a huge portion of the Romanov dynasty and the fall of just Russia's czars in general, is coming out with a brand new book in 2022, which I'm very excited about. It seems to focus on a period of Russian history. It's not technically about the Romanovs, but it is about a part of this story, this fall from grace, that I really know nothing about. I feel like most of the other books that I've read, you know, they cover the Romanovs and then they die and then that history is over. So really interested to read this book when it comes out next year. 5 is High Hopes. Frank Sinatra re-recorded this song for Kennedy's 1960 presidential campaign. If you ran for office, what would your campaign song be? I feel like I'm kind of gonna have to phone this in because I thought about it for a really, really long time and I didn't come up with anything that I really liked. And also Josh's thing for this question was so good. I'm just gonna have to go with Fight Song. It is my one, I think, like guilty pleasure pump up song, and I've still got Another Fight Left in Me feels like a solid politician, because everyone knows like a campaign is just a series of like small fights that you have to keep winning in order to get to like the final boss. So 6 is about We Choose to Go to the Moon. Name the last book you read that was set in space, because of course Kennedy's famous challenge to get Americans to the moon, which was fulfilled after he had been killed. The last book you read that was set in space, I had to troll through my story graph for this for an obnoxious length of time, and it turns out the answer is Obsidio by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is book 3 in the Illumini files, and it is one of the most amazing series of books that I've ever read. But I read this in May of 2020. So May of 2020 was the last time I read a book set in space. I'm not a huge sci-fi person, and if you're not a huge sci-fi person, you often aren't reading books set in space. So these are like an exception to the rule for me. So 7 is so hard to answer. It's about the coconut, because the coconut shell JFK carved a rescue message on during the PT-109 incident was encased in plastic and used as a paperweight in the Oval Office. Do you have any neat desk items or mementos? And the answer is yes, but most of them are on my desk at my office at work. I don't really feel the need to put knickknacks on my desk here because A, it's really small, and B, they're, you know, my knickknacks are like all around me. So like this is a globe that I got for my birthday from my brother's girlfriend, which was an amazing gift. I also have, you know, my degrees from my master's degrees that I just got. The stuffed animals that you always see up in the corner here, those are all stuffed animals that I had bought for my grandmother, who died in December of 2019, and when she died and we cleaned out her house, I got them all back, so they kind of sit here and watch over me. So like there are knickknacks on my shelves, but all of my interesting desk knickknacks are at work. 8 is about scandal, because the JFK presidency was definitely full of those, even if we learned about most of them after the fact. And it is, what personal or political scandal would you like to read more about? And I'm going to slightly subtract the like here. I am in the point on my presidential reading challenge where I really need to get around to reading about Bill Clinton. I'm finishing a book on George W. Bush right now, and of course Bill Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky scandal, which I feel needs a different name, because like calling something Bill Clinton did that wasn't appropriate the Monica Lewinsky scandal feels weird to me. So I don't necessarily know what those books are going to be, but I do have to read some books, or at least a book on Bill Clinton. HBO did recently-ish do a series on the Monica Lewinsky scandal, which I watched, which is really interesting. But yeah, gotta read some books on that. It's not something I would like to do, but it is something that I need to do kind of soonish. Question 9 is about the Peace Corps, which was famously created by President Kennedy, and it's what book made you a better person? And I thought about this a lot because I feel like sometimes the most powerful books are the ones that you don't realize you've taken a lesson from, but you read it and you internalize something from it, and it doesn't, you know, there's not like a moral, right, that you're like, ah, yes, this is the thing. But I was thinking a lot about Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, which is a very powerful book for writers, but I think also just for people. She has some amazing one-liners that I continuously use in the writing classes that I do, but also just for myself, thinking about, I mean, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so she has some really interesting things to say about what she calls shitty first drafts and, you know, letting yourself be. And I just really like that book. It's a powerful message that has stuck with me and that I've tried to pass on to other people. So that's my book. So 10 is about the conspiracy. What are your thoughts on the Kennedy assassination? Okay, I do not pretend to have done nearly enough reading on this. I know there is a conspiracy, you know, was there one shooter? Was there the shooter on the grassy knoll? Was it a larger, you know, government conspiracy, you know, a single deranged man? I don't pretend to have done enough reading to really know. I am interested in it. I also do think that it's really interesting that not only is there the conspiracy around how JFK died, but also how then his brother Robert Kennedy dies, RFK. I actually watched a little bit on that when Netflix made a series on the 50th anniversary of his death called The Making of a President, Bobby Kennedy, which was really excellent. And then I watched some stuff on that conspiracy theory as well. Was Sirhan Sirhan also a fall guy? So I just find it interesting that there's enough wiggle room in both of those stories for people to think that there's something going on there, and there's enough gray area in the entire Kennedy family story for there to be, you know, possible mafia connections, there's a lot here, and I do not pretend to know anything about it, but I find the moving pieces of it very interesting as like something to sift through. So I'm not gonna take a stand on it, but like I find it fascinating. So that's my story. So that has been the JFK tag and all of my answers to it. Hopefully you saw something interesting in here. This was really, really fun, and I kind of wish that there were tags on a bunch of other presidents that we could do. So maybe Kari or Josh will get on that. I am starting a PhD next week, so I am not sure if I'm going to be able to keep to my, I've been filming my own videos for every Monday and then filming with Michaela when we can get together, but I just don't know if I'm going to be able to keep doing that. I'm only going part-time for my PhD because I'm still working full-time, but my life is about to get kind of crazy. So hopefully there will be more presidents and more romance novels that I'll be able to tell you guys about in the future, but I am going to give myself the space to say I might not succeed. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Josh for always being a huge supporter of this channel and for tagging me, and I will see you guys when I see you. Bye!